There we go. All right. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. But real quick before I take attendance, I wanted to point out that on Canvas, I updated our class homepage so that it showcases the most recent announcements that I post. So you don't actually have to click on the announcement tab. It will always show the three most recent announcements. The one that I posted this morning just now, I got the event signups for the fall. So this is for our class on 9/11. So next Thursday, we are going to have, we're going to be volunteering. I know our class is 9:15 to 10:30, so we're primarily going to be helping with event setup. But if you are able to stay after the class is over, I am providing lunch to those students who are going to be there around 11 o'clock. And so if you could please fill out that form and just let me know if you're able to stay after. And then that way I can make sure I buy enough pizza. I don't want to run out of food. The Hidden Gems is there. So that information is for October the 2nd. And again, I got in touch with them. They need only about 10 volunteers. So the first 10 people to sign up are the ones that will be considered. And then, of course, I'll start like a kind of a wait list for anybody who is looking for volunteering opportunities. Again, remember that is a 21 and up only event for volunteering. And then I still haven't gotten the dates for the street taco cook-off, but I will keep y'all posted on that. Okay. So if you could go ahead and take a moment at some point if you are able to stay, or if you know that you're going to be either in my 1313 class or my 2301 class, which is at the 2 o'clock time frame, feel free to fill that out for me. All right. Let me go ahead and take attendance. All right. So we are going to cover chapter 1 today, this week. Okay. I did get your calendars updated over the weekend, so I just need to post those in Canvas. That way you have an idea of kind of what material we're covering each week. So I will get that posted. Chapter 1. What is chapter 1 about? It is organizational change. Okay. All right. If you have a computer open or if you are looking at your phone, I need you to either put it away or it needs to be course related. Okay. Because if you are not paying attention, then I'm gonna have to change my class policy to no electronics. It's really, really annoying to be up here in front and people are working on other things. All right. So please don't ruin it for the rest of the class. All right. So what are we talking about today? The forces of change. Yeah. Good. Excellent. What else? Okay. So the different types of people that are involved with change. Good. Good. Change within the organization. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by creativity change? Okay, so making some kind of change creatively about the organization. Okay, good, 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 good. I like that. All right, so how many of you, by a show of hands, did not watch the videos prior to coming to class? Thank you for your honesty. Okay. All right. So a lot of this information we're going to run through really quickly, and then I'm going to assign a group activity. Okay. So the purpose of this is more about for me to just do a quick recap, maybe about 15, 20 minutes, kind of breeze through it. and then we're going to jump into an activity. So if you don't watch the videos prior to coming to class, then you have less time really kind of with the information. Okay. So please make sure that you do that before you come to class. All right. How would you answer this question? How would you fill in the blank? Number 1, 2, or 3? Do you avoid change? Do you embrace change? Or do you tolerate change? How would you fill in this blank? I see a lot of tolerating. I see some embracing. Any ones? I don't see any ones. Okay. I would say, me personally, I'm between a 1, a 2, and a 3, depending on my mood for that day. And depending on what the change is, right? Sometimes the change is really kind of like, oh my gosh, am I really ready for this type of change? Pretty drastic. And so depending on how the change is presented, oftentimes also changes how we are ready and willing to address that change. Okay. Um, so we'll go through each 4 of these different external forces. What does it mean by external forces? Joseph, what do you think? Yeah, they're outside. We have no control over them. They're going to happen. Okay. That's perfect. They are outside of our organization. Okay. Internal forces are things that are within our organization. So things about maybe who we hire, um, what leaders we put in different positions. Internal might be if we want to change something about creativity. Do we want to change something about like the aesthetic? Do we want to change something about our dining room? Do we want to change something about um, how we present ourselves, how we present our company? So quick example, when I worked at TGI Fridays, how many of y'all have eaten at TGI Fridays? It's probably a reason why they're not around anymore. But very very few hands went up. But back in the day, okay, so I'm going to say prior to, let's say maybe 2000, okay, prior to 2000, TGI Fridays, they were known kind of be like this wacky brand, right? They had, how many of you have ever seen the movie Office Space? No. Very early movie with Jennifer Aniston. Great movie. And she worked at TJ Fridays, right? And they had all this flair. And so as a server, you could earn flair by doing different things, different pins and stuff like that. They wore suspenders. They got to showcase their flair. And the tabletops were red and white stripes because that was part of their logo. Okay. They had all this random memorabilia on the walls. They had like a canoe, bicycles, like just total random stuff, right? When I worked at TGI Fridays, my store at the Forum was the very first store that they rebranded. They went to dark wood tables. Their uniforms were black polo shirts with the red and white kind of collar and around the edge of the sleeves. That was it. We were allowed 2 pieces of flair, one on each lapel of our polo shirt. That was it, right? And so they really tried to change their brand. That was an internal change that they made, okay? They didn't really go over it all that well because when people walked in, they were like, is this TGI Fridays? It's like, yeah, it just says Fridays. It doesn't say TGI Fridays. It just says Fridays. So people weren't quite getting the transition. So that was an internal change. Technology. What movie is this from? Okay, we're getting back into modern times. Awesome. Okay, Devils Wear Prada. This is one of my favorite quotes of the entire movie. Um, as you all know, I'm an orange. I like to move quickly. And so I embrace technology. How many of you embrace technology? Okay, how many of you are like frightened of technology and don't want to use it? Okay, cool. Awesome. Um, Technology, depending on what organization we're in, can help us move faster, move more efficiently. Um, And so oftentimes I heard somewhere I think it was last week. I can't remember where I was in a meeting, but people who are hesitant to adopt AI, artificial intelligence, using things like ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Grok, all those different generative AI platforms, people who are hesitant to adopt those, um, you are going to be kind of sitting in the past, right? And the person that's sitting next to you is probably going to get promoted faster because they understand how to use that technology efficiently. Okay. So it's important to learn how to utilize AI to help you be more efficient. The technology can help with that. So the market, okay, the market is basically just the location. Here's a perfect example of how the market can change over time. One of the things that's happening right now in San Antonio, is anybody following what's happening with the downtown area and the big controversy? Anybody? I know Moses. Hold on. Let me see if anybody else is. Okay. It definitely impacts the tourism industry and the hospitality industry. So this is really important for you to follow and pay attention to. Anybody have an idea of what I'm talking about? Daniel? Not the, well, okay, yes, the Alamo. I think we're kind of like on the tail end of the Alamo. There was a lot of controversy, right? They wanted to move the cenotaph, which a lot of people like associate as like the burial place of all the heroes from the Alamo. So they wanted to move that cenotaph, and that was a huge, big ordeal. They also moved out all of those entertainment companies that were right across the street, like the Guinness Book of World Records, the not the Wax Museum, that's still there, but like the Haunted Adventure, they're going to make that building the new visitor center for the Alamo. Okay, so yeah, that was something that's definitely happening. What else? It's currently in the news right now. Mark, the Spurs Arena, yes, also more commonly known as Project Marvel, but now because Project Marvel has like this negative thundercloud over it, we've switched our wording to now it's the Sports and Entertainment District. Okay, the Sports and Entertainment District. How many of you have ever been to downtown Houston before? Anybody been down to downtown Houston? Right next to downtown Houston, in downtown Houston, they have the convention center. Minute Maid Park. Is it still Minute Maid Park? No, they changed the name. They changed it to something else. But they have the baseball stadium. They have the concert venue. They have all that entertainment, the sports, all that stuff is, and where the Rockets play. All of that is centralized downtown, right? And so then that brings up a lot of business, a lot of tourism opportunities. And so that sports and entertainment district, it'll be interesting to see if and when that actually happens, and the impact that could have on the downtown scene of San Antonio, and how downtown may look completely different in 5 or 10 years. And so the market is out of our control, right? As far as my business itself, but sometimes I have to address and respond to the change of the market. Our competitors also play a role, how our competitors change. I'll pull up this link here in just a second, but this link is basically talking about how different cities across the nation are spending, or how different states across the nation are investing money in tourism. It used to be, you look at this, like this big piece of the pie, right? This pie chart up here. And there's only a certain number of people that travel to a destination, or maybe travel to a state, right? And people come and spend their money, their tourism dollars, in different locations. San Antonio has been relatively fortunate because we have the top two tourist destinations in the state of Texas, which are the Alamo and not Fiesta Texas, but although Fiesta Texas is like what I would consider like the flagship store, like the flagship location of the brand. So there's people that come to San Antonio just to go to Fiesta Texas. So they're both downtown. I just said it, Riverwalk, sorry. Alamo and the Riverwalk. Okay. So we were really fortunate. And then other cities were like, hey, what is San Antonio doing well? How many of you have heard of other Riverwalks popping up around different cities, right? Oklahoma, you said? Yeah, Oklahoma City. I've seen it in other cities. They can't quite replicate what we have here in San Antonio, but they try because it's such a huge success. And so now people are competing for those tourism dollars. People are competing to get those tourism dollars. Give me 1 second. Let me close this door. So our competitors can change. Like, oh my goodness, all of a sudden, Houston is spending millions of dollars to attract tourists to come to their city. And so now San Antonio might have to respond and increase their tourism spend as well. Okay. And then the workforce. Not in what ways do we have diversity in our workforce? Yep. In what he said, people. So, in what ways are the people diverse in our workforce? Okay, so racially diverse, good. What else? Okay, their cultural backgrounds, good. What else? Good. Their religions. I'm sorry, something up here. The demographic, yeah. So these are all types of demographics. So what additional types of demographics are we looking at? Gender. Okay, good. Age. We have a lot of different generations in the workforce, all the way from boomers to whatever the new generation is called. I don't know. I haven't followed that, right? So what we have like Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, Gen Z. We have millennials. Is it Alpha? Alpha is the newest one. Okay, starting back at the beginning. Is there a generation beta? Oh my gosh. So all those different generations, all those different age groups, they respond very differently to different leadership styles. Okay. So diversity, I know oftentimes when we think of diversity, we think of like the top, like visible diversity, gender, racial background, cultural backgrounds, but also think about not only those, but we also want to think about the age. We want to think about the skill level. So some people are coming in with great technology use abilities, and some people are coming in with people. That might be people in our workforce that have no technology skills. And so um, how do we as leaders of those organizations develop and manage those people to help them be the best and help our company succeed? Okay. So three forces of change: reinvention, reengineering, and continuous improvement. Okay. Reinvention is the most extreme. TGI Fridays, they changed everything, right? They changed how their menus looked. They changed the uniforms. They changed the interior. They changed their logo on the outside of the building. So they made a complete reinvention. Okay. Reengineering is maybe focusing more on like a process that's happening. We're going to focus on that one process, and then we're going to make a change from there. Okay. And then continuous improvement is just a concept of we always want to make sure we're trying to improve in some way. Okay. We do not change just for the sake of changing. Okay. You should only make a change if there's going to be some kind of improvement. If it's working, great. Now, if there's are some external forces that come in and play, and oh my gosh, we have to respond to those, that's one thing. But you don't just change just because for the sake of changing. Okay. Let's skip that one. Here we go. PDCA cycle. We'll wrap up with this. Okay. PDCA is plan, do, check, act. This is basically like a checklist of what you can do to implement change. Okay. To implement change. So planning. First, when you're planning, we want to recognize, is there a need for a change? If there's no need for change, then guess what? We shouldn't change. Okay. Let's use Cracker Barrel as an example. What's happening with Cracker Barrel right now? They did a logo change, not just a logo change, but they also, yeah, go ahead, Karen. That's a great question. I don't understand the big ordeal about changing the logo. Um, I don't understand the big deal. Is that what it is? Okay. Okay. So the logo was kind of representing the Deep South because there was the gentleman sitting on the rocking chair next to the barrel, and they took out the barrel and the gentleman. So it's now just the logo. Okay. Go ahead. Same thing. Okay. Cool. So that was the controversy. They also changed the interior of their stores to make a little bit more like modern chic, I guess, like more like modern country. Um, and so yeah, but so is there a need for change? And whatever that we weren't involved in those internal meetings, but was there really a need for change? And the way we do that is a SWOT analysis. We look at our strengths, our weaknesses, the opportunities for growth, and the threats, things that are kind of that could make us potentially be unsuccessful. Okay. Um, then we want to create a vision and describe what that vision looks like. When we look at the current status to where we are to where we want to be, that's called that's called a gap analysis. Okay. Where I want to be is up here. Where I am is down here. The middle part is my gap. Okay. So how do I close that gap to where I want to be? Okay. And then as you are developing that plan, that is for the management function, but is only management involved in that plan change development? No, it should. Yeah, exactly. It should be everyone. Why do you think it's important? Let's say we're going to make a POS change. Okay, point of sales. Let's say we're going to make a POS change, and we're going to go from handwritten tickets to technology. Okay, why do you think it's important to have people, maybe as servers, involved with that change? Edward. Okay, good. So they understand how to use it. What else? They're the ones that are the main ones that are affected. They're the ones who have to use it all the time. And so getting their input as what will work, what will not work is really important. Okay. Does that mean they're going to make the ultimate decision? No. The managers still make that ultimate decision, but getting input is really important. Okay. So then the doing, we want to communicate the vision, and we have to recognize that some people are going to be unwilling to change. Okay. Those are our inhibitors. Okay. We want to know who our team is. We have those explorers, conservatives, and inhibitors. Where should we start? What do you think? Explorers, conservatives, or inhibitors? One, two, or three? Which group should we start with when we want to actually implement the change? What do you think? One, two, or three? Explorers, conservatives, or inhibitors? Okay, I see mostly ones, but who's Edward? Why threes? Okay, that's an idea. Start with the hardest people to work with. Okay, good. What would be a downside for starting with the inhibitors? They're hard to sell the idea to. What else? Yeah, they've already decided this isn't going to work. And so, guess what? It's not going to work. Okay. So, it is a good idea to start with our explorers, our champions, right? Because then they can kind of get those inhibitors on board. They can say, hey, okay, this is why it's going to work. This is why maybe those people who are the explorers, conservatives are kind of like on the fence. They're like, I'm okay just staying the same, right? If we go back to that question about embracing, tolerating change, they're the ones who kind of just tolerate the change. Okay. But we want to think about start with those explorers because they're the ones who are going to jump right in. And then as you see those successes and we celebrate those successes, then hopefully we'll get those inhibitors on board. And they'll see that, okay, this change really is successful. this really is changing the way I do my work. This is changing the efficiency. This is changing this, and this. And so hopefully as we celebrate those successes, those inhibitors would maybe at least be moved up into conservatives. Is it important to include inhibitors in the planning process? Samantha, why do you think so?
Because in inhibitors, like they're more like they want more facts.
They want more details. Okay, more facts and details. Good. What else? Say it one more time, Karen. Okay, cool. If they're part of the process, then maybe you'll actually bring them on. Good. They're also the pessimistic people. They're like, that's never going to work. And here's why it's not going to work. Okay. And maybe they'll think about something that maybe we don't need to change our logo. I don't know. I'm just going to keep using that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. Right. But maybe that person's going to be like, you know what? We don't really need to do this. It's not really necessary. But then if we kind of can back it up with that data and those facts, then okay, maybe they understand why we need to do something. And the PDCA, the check, okay? When we're checking on what did we do, what do we say we're going to do, okay? We want to look to see what that baseline was. Did we meet our goal or did we not, right? But eventually we're going to close that gap. So if our gap was this big to begin with, now we implemented some kind of change. Hopefully our gap got smaller, not bigger. But if our gap got smaller, we got to analyze that gap now and say, why didn't we get to our goal? We're a little bit closer, but why didn't we get to all the way to our goal? Okay. So we're going to evaluate what we did, and then we start the process all over again. And then we act on those things. Okay. We look for ways to continuously improve. All right, so in Canvas that is due next week on Tuesday, there is a change reflection, okay? In this change reflection assignment, okay? This is a time that you are going to simply reflect. You're going to reflect on a time, and it can, hopefully it's work related. If you don't have a lot of work experience, maybe this can be like something if you were like in a high school club and there was a change, or maybe like you're involved with a student organization here on St. Philip's and there's a change, okay? You are going to identify a time that you went through some kind of change in an organization. You're going to identify, were you an inhibitor? Were you a conservative, or were you an explorer? Okay, what role did you play? And then what was the ultimate outcome of the change? Okay, this is just simply a reflection of you thinking through the PDCA cycle and applying that to a real life example that you went through. Okay, so when I'm grading this assignment, I'm not grading the content as far as what the change that happened is. I'm not gonna judge whether the change was successful or not. That doesn't make a difference on your grade. What I am going to be grading on your assessment is, are you reflecting on the PDCA cycle effectively? Okay, what was the planning process like? What happened when the change was implemented? What was the status of the change? Is it still going on, or was it resolved? And then how did the company move forward? Okay, or respond to that. So that's what we're going to be. That's your homework assignment, and what we're working on for the rest of today. Okay, and then also next week, or not, sorry, on Thursday of this week, you are going to be presenting your results of what we work on the second half of class today. Okay, so let's see how many people we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 27. Okay, let's do let's do 6 groups of 4. Okay. There's gonna be one group of 5. So 6 groups of 4, 4, and then there's going to be one group of 5. Okay, I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to get into your groups and sit with your group members. I'm going to let you choose your groups. Ready? Go. I would encourage you to move around and go sit with your group. All right, so what we are going to do is I'm going to bring by a case study, okay? You're going to read through the case study, and you as a group are going to take on the role as consultants to figure out how you're going to change and or respond to the case study, the incident that happened in the case study, okay? These are all hospitality related. Some of them may be familiar to you. Some of them may not be. So if you want to do a little bit more research than what's on the page, you can do a Google search for the information. And then what's going to happen is next class, when we come in for the first, I'm going to say, let's say the first, we have 6 groups. If I give you 5 minutes each, that's 30 minutes to present. Let me do some math. Hour and 15 minus 30. Let's give you 45 minutes to present. So that gives me 30 minutes. So the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes of class on Thursday, okay, I'm going to give you a chance. I'll have poster boards. I'll have markers, and you're going to basically come up and prepare your presentation, okay? Basically, you're going to be using that PDCA cycle, that plan, do, check, act cycle, and you're going to be applying it to what you see here in this case study. All right, so I'm going to bring these by. Let's do this one. I'll do that one. I'm going to give you this one. Yes.
Implement the act part of it.
So, yeah, that's a good question. How do you implement the act? So basically, when you're doing the PDCA cycle, like with the acting part, you're gonna probably want to implement, like, implement these plans like within a year. Maybe give like different timeline points, and basically just kind of give like a presentation of how this organization can potentially use this to be able to implement this change, right? So it's kind of like a roadmap that you're giving them, more so than, like, obviously we can't act on it because we haven't implemented it yet. So think about going back to here when we're planning. That vision statement is, what is it going to look like after this change has been implemented? And then you're going to give those baseline measurements. So at this point, this is what we're going to implement at this point and through the process. So maybe it's a year change. We're going to implement it over the course of a time frame. Think about one thing that just popped into my head is Southwest Airlines. What major change is happening with Southwest Airlines? Assigned seats, right? And so Southwest Airlines, they didn't just pop up and say, tomorrow we're going to assign seats, right? They came out and said, okay, this is going to happen in this time frame. So we start preparing people. So that's kind of what you're gonna showcase there. Okay. So we have 4 different case studies. One is about United Airlines Flight 3411. One is the Hotel Aria. One is the Oceanic cruise ship. And one is the infamous Red Lobster endless shrimp incident. Okay. So I have extra copies. I just wanted to kind of pass out ones initially. I'm going to come by with extra copies. And so you all can take a look at that. I will also post these on Canvas. So if you want a digital file of it, you can definitely have that and refer to it. Okay. So think about today, what I want you to accomplish in the next half an hour, 10:30 when class is done. I want you to think about your group. I want you to read through the case study, identify those facts, identify what's going to happen. And then when you present on Thursday, have a kind of a general idea of who's going to do what, and what information they're going to present, or maybe the information they're going to gather between now and on Thursday. Okay, so when you come into class on Thursday, you're ready to present. All right. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. Yes, go ahead. Uh-huh. The first 30 minutes of class, you'll get to do work on that and prepare that, and then we're going to start with presentations. Yep. Yep. All right, if I can have your attention real quick, this is just in the last 10 minutes of class. I just want to point out, so I did put the document, the Word document, it has all the case studies in it in one document. So you're welcome to download that and find your case study. The presentation template, I'm going to go over here in just a moment. And then I've also added the assignment for your in-class presentations. I will add a rubric to that so you can kind of see what you will be graded on. But let's take a look at this presentation. Okay, this is very, very, very basic. Okay, you are welcome to make changes to this as far as graphics, as far as design. You're welcome to do any of that that you would like to do, animations. Just don't go crazy with the animations. So I've given you kind of placeholders of things to think about. It's not the end all be all. If you want to include more information, you can. Okay. So of course, you're going to insert your case study title, which is basically where it says the case study. Don't put the case study, just put the title of the case study, okay? And then insert the group names. Oh, I should have an S on it, sorry. Group member names. All right. You're going to identify the facts of the case, okay? This is just a summary, so we as the class kind of know what's going on. Use bullet statements, okay? We don't want full-on sentences. We don't want people to be reading off of this, but just kind of take that and put it into a concise bullet statement, okay? So instead of like, the company did this, just put what the company did, right? Obviously, it's about the company, so we don't have to put the company did this, okay? And so use bullet statements for the facts of the case, okay? Then what your proposed plan is. So think about a vision statement of what that company is going to look like after you've implemented the change. And then I also want to, hold on a second. Sorry, I went this way. Proposed change. So that insert the vision statement, and then you're going to identify what type of change is it. Is this going to be a reinvention, meaning the whole company is going to change? Or is this a re-engineering, you're just focusing on a process, okay? Then the next one, thank you. The next one is going to be your proposed plan, okay? So let me just take this one out since it's on the previous slide. You're going to describe the planning process. So who's going to be involved? What's the makeup of the planning process? Who's going to be involved in those brainstorming sessions? And then kind of perform a gap analysis. Okay, where is the company now compared to where in your vision, where's the company going to be? And what do we need to do? What do we need to do in the middle to make sure we can achieve what our goal is going to be? Okay. Yes, sir.
So a gap analysis applies applicable to every all of these situations.
From where, like, so let's say it's a customer service concern, right? So our gap analysis is we have this customer service issue. We want to have none of those customer service issues. That's our goal. So how do we get to that? Or I think if we have an issue where we oversold, how do we get to that point where we avoid that error? Yes. In the past, yeah. There's going to be information about what happened, what did Red Lobster do, and that's okay. But imagine yourself that this is a brand new issue, and you have the opportunity to present to Red Lobster what you think they should do. Okay, good question. Okay, so that gap analysis, it can be financial in nature, meaning that it's costing money. It can be customer perception in nature, however you're going to do that gap analysis. Describe your implementation. This is the do part, right? So what is that timeline going to be? And then use bullet statements to highlight those key milestones. So this is when this is going to happen. And then 6 months later, we're going to reevaluate, or a year from then, we're going to reevaluate. Okay. So what does that implementation and rollout look like? Check. So describing the recommended metrics. How are you going to determine when we get to the point where we're checking, how are you going to determine, are we being successful or are we headed towards failure? Okay. What evaluation methods? Is it going to be customer surveys? Is it going to be employee surveys? Is it going to be data about the performance of the company, right? So what metrics are we going to be able to check in order to determine, are we headed towards success or are we headed towards failure? And then act. So describe how continuous improvement can be applied in this situation so we don't have that situation happen again in the future. So that's going to be how we're going to address the act. Okay. So you're presenting this kind of as a consulting group. Okay. You can keep it as basic as this. Okay. Couple of things to think about when you are presenting. The background and the text should be contrasting colors. So if you are going to change anything, don't put yellow background and white text. Those don't contrast enough. People can't see it. Okay. Minimum font size is 22. Minimum is 22. Okay. As my professors say, slides are free. So if you need to make another second slide, you can just make a second slide to make sure that the font stays big. Okay. We don't want to do a whole bunch of text on a slide because then people are focused on reading that, right? We want to use those bullet statements, summary. So then that's what you are up here presenting. When you're presenting, I'm not just going to read, describe how continuous improvement can be applied in the situation to avoid it occurring in the future. Okay. Now, I know I did that, but when you are presenting, you want to make sure that those bullet points are there to remind you. Okay. The last thing I want to say, when it says like describe, you're going to want to delete that. Okay. Or maybe do a subtitle of preventing future occurrences, right? So when you have this, describe this information, you want to delete that text and not in your final presentation. Okay. This is just a template to give you ideas of what you're thinking about. Last thing. If you want to, I'm going to challenge you. Okay. How many of you are not familiar with using Smart Art? You've never used Smart Art before. Okay, cool. Smart Art is this button right here, this icon right here on the Insert tab of PowerPoint. When you click on that, you can put information here, and then you just put your text in this little sidebar, right? You open up using this little arrow right here, you open the sidebar, you put this in here, and it automatically creates this image for you. You don't have to do anything. So on your timeline slide, this might be a good thing to include a visual with your timeline. This is what's going to happen, okay? So I'm going to challenge you to utilize this if you would like to. You don't have to, but then you can resize it however you need to, okay? This is a great way to implement some graphics without it just being a list, okay? And then you can change how it looks. You can change the colors. You can do whatever you want, okay? To make it more customizable. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay, so I made some changes to this. Let me upload the new changes to Canvas. It's in week 2 module. So when I'm still going to give you some time in class on Thursday to work on it. So maybe if you want to have your classmates each work on different things and then come together and bring your slides together, you can work on that in that first 30 minutes. All right. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. I look forward to seeing what y'all's thoughts and considerations are for these case studies on Thursday. Have a great day.